Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, and welcome to this week's Trump Watch. Let's begin with Venezuela, and specifically the high seas off of the Venezuelan shores, where President Trump and his national security establishment have been killing people. They say that they are suspected drug law violators of U.S. drug laws. And so they've been blowing these boats out of the water and killing the occupants of those boats. They haven't provided any evidence, but they say that they have the authority to just kill these people on the basis that they say they suspect or they're convinced that they're engaged in drug running in violation of U.S. drug laws, which is kind of difficult to understand since these boats can't even reach the United States. It's difficult to understand why the U.S. government has the authority to kill people in the high seas for possessing what the U.S. government considers are illegitimate drugs. Certainly the U.S. government doesn't have that authority in the United States, inside the United States, or do they? Because if we examine President Trump's and the Pentagon's rationale for killing these people, then it seems to me that certainly that rationale would apply across the United States, inside the United States as well. For example, they say that these are drug smugglers. Well, we've got drug smugglers here in the United States. They say, well, the Venezuelan government hasn't stopped the drug smuggling. Well, the U.S. government hasn't stopped drug smuggling here in the United States. There's a massive amount of drugs taking place here in the United States, a massive distribution network. Certainly the U.S. government has not put a stop to it any more than the Venezuelan government has. But what Trump has and the Pentagon have cleverly done is they've couched their killings not just in terms of the drug war, this failed decades-long government program, but they've couched it in the war on terrorism. Now, why have they done that? Well, terrorism is a federal criminal offense, just like drug laws. And in the United States, you at least before the 9/11 attacks, it was illegal to kill a terrorist suspect just on sight, just simply because government officials suspected he was a terrorist. They didn't have the legal authority to just kill him outright. They are required under U.S. law to arrest them, prosecute them, if they're convicted, incarcerate them, punish them. But under no circumstances could they use deadly force against somebody they were convinced was a terrorist, unless that person was using deadly force against them. But after the 9/11 attacks, everything changed. The Pentagon said, and the CIA said, we now have the authority to treat terrorist suspects as illegal enemy combatants. And they were considered illegal because they weren't wearing uniforms, like terrorist uniforms. So they said, this is an armed combat against the terrorists of the world. And so they said, we can treat terrorist suspects in either of two ways, in the traditional constitutional way or this new way, this extrajudicial way, extra constitutional way. And that's what involves, assassination and torture, indefinite detention. That's what Guantanamo Bay was all about. And so you could have two terrorist suspects who were accused of doing the exact same thing, but one could go into the constitutional route, and it was all up to them, and they had the option, or this extra non-constitutional route at Guantanamo Bay, including American citizens. And remember, it was a global war on terrorism, so that those powers extended here in the United States as well, and that's what the Jose Padilla case was about. He was an American citizen who the Pentagon took out of the federal court system and put into their system, tortured him brutally, and the federal court said, we're going to uphold this because they're never going to buck the national security establishment, the federal courts. And if you do find an instance of a federal judge doing so at the district court level, he's going to be quickly reversed on appeal. So what Trump and the Pentagon have cleverly done is they've couched their killings on the high seas off Venezuela in terms of the war on terrorism. They're saying these are illegal enemy combatants. We're at war. We're at war because they knew that the courts had essentially folded when it came to this newfangled post-11 theory on war on terrorism. So they said, these are narco-terrorists. They're both drug dealers and they're terrorists, and so we have the authority to kill them without due process of law, no arrest, no warrants or anything like that. Now, interestingly enough, the Coast Guard is still following the traditional route of approaching the boat and boarding the boat. If they find drugs, they charge them, they arrest them, they bring them back to the United States for prosecution and trial. But Trump and the Pentagon are using this post 9/11 theory of war on terrorism to kill these people. Now, one of the interesting developments here is that, they've killed 27 people. And I'm not laughing about that, because when you're killing people in cold blood like this is no laughing matter. What I'm laughing about is that their worst nightmare happened because they fired some kind of projectiles or dropped bombs from a B-52. I'm not really sure how they did it, but they blew this submarine out of the water. But their worst nightmare, they have 2 survivors. Now you can imagine the panic that went through these soldiers who were dutifully following orders, which is an interesting phenomenon in and of itself, because soldiers take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Well, there is nothing constitutional about killing these people, in cold blood, just killing them. But they're following those orders, and they blew this submersible out of the water, but there are 2 survivors, and you can imagine the panic going through them. What do we do? What do we do? Well, it would have been logical for them to just fire or shoot those people. Apparently they were feeling a little bit sheepish about that. But why? If they're going to kill them in the submersible, why would they feel sheepish about killing them as they're bobbing in the water there? Okay. Well, I guess because they felt they were defenseless. They're bobbing in the water. Well, they're defenseless in that submersible too. Now, the Pentagon makes a big point of saying, oh, there's no troops that have lost their lives. The American troops have been safe in these battles, because they consider them battles. It's like they're boosting their ego, after what happened with the fiasco in Afghanistan. 20 years in Afghanistan, killing and sacrificing American troops and destroying the whole country. They got booted out, and Iraq is no better. I mean, they still have troops there, but they've got a regime there that's aligned with Iran, which is considered an official enemy. And so they needed, and then their war against Russia is all bogged down there in Ukraine, and it looks like Ukraine's on the verge of losing that war. But it's not really Ukraine, it's the Pentagon operating through NATO and using Ukraine as the proxy. That's not going too well for them. So this is undoubtedly boosting their spirits that they're winning these battles against these boats, and that it's without loss of American soldiers here. Well, but all of a sudden you've got these 2 survivors. And so you can imagine the panic that went through these soldiers. I mean, like, how are we going to report that we didn't kill them when they were in the submersible? Should we kill them now? Well, it would have been logical. Yeah, you were going to kill them in the submersible. Why not kill them as they're bobbing up and down? But they felt a little bit sheepish about this, because they start thinking about war crimes. They said, are we really supposed to be killing defenseless people that are bobbing in the water? Well, are you supposed to be killing defenseless people that are in a boat or in a submersible? And you're not. But in any event, they took these 2 prisoners into custody. Now, under their rationale, these are prisoners of war. This is a war on terrorism, right? So it's Geneva Convention. You're supposed to be treating them as prisoners of war, or at the very least as criminal defendants. Either one. And so what they did, now remember, these are narco-terrorists. That's why they were trying to kill them. That's their rationale. Threat to U.S. national security, fentanyl, killing Americans, invading America, injecting cocaine into their noses of, millions of Americans that are, drug-addled and on drugs and so forth. And all of a sudden, I mean, these are dangerous people. The reason that the way we know that they're dangerous, and I put dangerous in quotation marks, is they're killing them. Hey, that's their rationale. These are dangerous people that don't deserve to be living. And guess what they did with these two? They released them. which shows you the whole sham of this whole thing. If they're so dangerous as to merit killing, what happened? Why release them? One was released to Colombia. Man, he was a Colombian citizen. And Colombia, through its President Petro is there saying, oh, you fired at a boat in Venezuelan waters. Now, I don't know if he's talking about the submersible or another boat or whatever, but he's accusing Trump and the military of having fired on boats, at least one boat out of Colombian waters. And then the other one was released to Ecuador. Now, Colombia says they're going to prosecute the guy, but that's just weird because you've got Trump over there now accusing Petro of being a drug war leader too. So now you got the president of Venezuela is being accused by Trump of being a drug war leader or a drug dealer leader or whatever. And then you've got now the president of Colombia, same thing. And of course, Colombia, remember, that's the one where, they back in this, I think it was the 70s, they were waging war against Pablo Escobar, major drug cartel leader at the time. Oh, well, if we just get Escobar, that'll solve the whole war on drugs, Well, they finally killed Escobar, like they're killing people today on the high seas. But Escobar was a drug war leader, cartel leader. It wasn't like, these are poor people in these boats. I guarantee you there's no drug cartel leaders in those boats. So the notion that they're going to win the war on drugs by killing these poor people that are probably getting $500 a piece to smuggle these drugs, and now they're dead and their families are without a breadwinner is ridiculous. But in any event, Trump says he's slashing aid to Colombia because it's not doing enough to stop the drugs. Well, what's Trump doing to stop the drugs inside the United States? There's obviously, there's a massive drug distribution network here too. And so in Ecuador, they said they're not going to prosecute him. There was one of the other survivors was from Ecuador. Imagine that. Well, if these people are so dangerous, why would they release them? So now, if Petro's really a drug leader, cartel leader, and they've released one of the guys that they said was so dangerous they were trying to kill him, back to the supposed drug cartel leader of Colombia. And now Ecuador, this guy is now free to go out and wage war as a narco-terrorist. They released a narco-terrorist, or at least what they called a narco-terrorist. It shows you the whole sham of this thing. It's just a lie. It's a lie that they keep repeating, that these are dangerous threats to national security. Really, you've got this huge armada there, and it seems to me that this is really all about regime change. That Trump wants to get rid of the president of Venezuela, Maduro. Clearly, Maduro's an illegitimate president. He clearly lost the last election. He's brutal. He's dictatorial. But that's something for the Venezuelan people to decide. Unfortunately, you've got many Venezuelan citizens that are yearning for American intervention. They look at President Trump as their daddy. The leaders in this opposition, they want their daddy to come and save them. It's not the job of the U.S. government. It's not Donald Trump's job to be serving as the daddy for the Venezuelan opposition to Maduro. It's their job to do that. And this was the whole idea of 19th century American philosophy on foreign interventionism and our founding principles of non-interventionism. That this government does not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. Now, if Americans want to go and join the resistance and help arm the Venezuelan opposition, fine. On a private basis, fine. But this whole notion of the war on terrorism, the war on drugs, to me, it's all about killing these Venezuelan citizens and other citizens there as a way to say, we can do this. And if you even think about responding to this, we will come in and we will use our military might, the most powerful military establishment in history, really. Okay, they got booted out of Vietnam. They got booted out of Afghanistan. They installed a pro-Iranian regime in Iraq. They're losing in Ukraine, but they're still the most powerful military. If Trump decides to invade Venezuela, it would be a clear act of aggression, violation of the U.S. Constitution, no declaration of war from Congress, violating the wars of aggression principle set forth at Nuremberg. But the troops will follow the orders, just like they did in Iraq. No declaration of war there, and every soldier dutifully obeyed orders. That's what soldiers do. They obey orders. They take this oath to support and defend the Constitution, but their loyalty is to the president. It's always to the president. Now, interestingly enough, the commanding general of the Southern Command, I think it is, he resigned just recently, only 1 year into, I think, his 3-year term. We don't know why, but it's possible, as far as I'm concerned, that he resigned because he felt that he was doing wrong, that killing people like this is just absolutely wrong, violates the fundamental principles of morality, of justice, of due process. You don't just do this. And if that's the reason he resigned early, I commend him. But where I don't commend him is keeping quiet about it. If that's the reason, he should announce that that's the reason. He should have the courage to come forward with his convictions, to serve as a model for other soldiers there that are maybe struggling over, is this right? Is it wrong? I mean, is another reason why Trump's so mad at Petro, the president of Colombia. He said those troops should disobey orders. And Trump went ballistic over that. How dare you tell our troops to disobey orders? Trump wants loyalty. Every ruler wants loyalty. He doesn't want the troops to be questioning his orders. But if it's an illegal order, Petro's right. It's an illegal order. Killing these defenseless people in these boats is a direct violation of principles of right conduct, of morality, and law. And our Constitution that requires, notice and hearing. I mean, this is why the Coast Guard is doing the right thing. But Trump says, oh, well, what good's it done? Well, he says that they're still smuggling drugs. Well, yeah, that's the way black markets work. He knows that. And no matter what they do, mandatory minimum sentences. The Berlin Wall he built along the border, okay, immigration, but it could also be used for drug smugglers. Asset forfeiture, where they just steal money on the highways. All of that was to win the war on drugs. And what good did it do? No good at all. Because black markets will always triumph. And, they killed Escobar back in the 70s. What good did it do? He was replaced by new drug cartels. Every time they knock out one drug cartel, 10 more take their place because the price shoots up. Black market prices. So there's violence and turf wars. And we've maintained here at FFF for 35 years, there's only one solution to all this. And I think Trump deep down knows it. I think the Pentagon knows it. And that's drug legalization. Okay, just end this failed, destructive war on drugs. But they need it. They need it to create this chaos and crisis and strife and conflict, an excuse for regime change. I mean, they're just looking for an excuse over there, like a Gulf of Tonkin thing. Oh, we've been attacked by this Venezuelan boat here that fired on American warships, and we're just defending ourselves. We're defending ourselves, and I think that's what they're doing. They're looking for an excuse, but I wouldn't be surprised if they start bombing drug cartels, which is bombing Venezuela. I mean, that's an act of war. Whether it's a drug cartel or not, you're bombing a foreign country, and they're just looking for an excuse. Or they just invade like they did with Noriega, the president of Panama. They accused him of being a drug dealer. They went in there. He was a former partner of the CIA, get that. And they brought him back to the United States. They killed a bunch of innocent people in the process. But that doesn't matter to them. It's clear that the lives of these people over there don't matter to them. They have less value than the life of an American. If they had the same value as the life of an American, they wouldn't be blowing them out of the water. They'd be over there taking them into custody and charging them. So that's what's going on here. I think that it's a real sham the fact that they've released these people. I think that exposes this whole operation for the sham it is. Now, let's talk about the government shutdown. This is getting really humorous with the government shutdown, because they've got to be getting nervous over the fact that nobody cares. Okay, now I'm not an anarchist. I believe in limited government, but which, of course, my definition of essential functions of government are radically different from the Trump administration and from the statists in Washington. Their idea of essential is the massive national security state and the massive welfare state, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all this other nonsense. So they're non-essential functions like a national park operating or something. I don't know what else in there, but I don't really know what's been shut down. But who cares? Even from their definition, life goes on. I was telling a friend yesterday, somebody was saying, aren't you concerned about the shutdown? I said, who's concerned about the shutdown? They're proving that life goes on without the federal government, or with the federal government being, quote, shut down. And that's got to be worrying them, because if we can manage our lives with the government being shut down, what's the problem? Okay. Now, their definition of shutdown, of course, is the massive national security state, welfare state that continues operating. So I'm not really sure what they've shut down. They've shut down some functions, but nobody cares. They've been the people that have been laid off, they care. But I mean, life goes on here in the United States, and so I think they've got to be nervous about people figuring that out, because for a long time they had people really afraid. Oh my gosh, the government's going to shut down. The government's going to shut down. I don't know how long it's been shut down now. A month or so. Who cares? Everybody's life is fine. But they haven't shut down the IRS. They haven't shut down the DEA. Obviously, they haven't shut down Homeland Security, war on terrorism, Pentagon, CIA, NSA. All the bad stuff. They keep going. But it is humorous that the government shut down and everything goes on. Let me talk about John Bolton. John Bolton's big supporter of the national security state. He was a national security advisor for Trump, but now Trump's going after him because Bolton turned on Trump, wrote a book critical of him, and so Trump's going after him the same way that the feds went after Trump on taking classified information. So in a sense, Bolton's getting hoisted in his own petard, because if he really did do this, I mean, it's really ironic, because he's a big supporter of the national security state and all this whole ridiculous concept of national security, national security. Those are the two most important words in the American political lexicon, national security. I mean, you walk into a federal court and, the U.S. attorney there mentions, Your Honor, this case involves national security. Oh, man, the federal judge will start quivering and quaking, man, and he's just nervous because, national security. Well, do you realize throughout the 19th century, that term wasn't even a term? I mean, nobody thought in terms of national security because America wasn't a national security state. You only care about national security when you're a national security state, and there's no definition to it. And so I guarantee you that whatever John Bolton took home is no different from whatever Donald Trump took to Mar-a-Lago, if he really did take those classified information with him over there, or Biden, the stuff that he supposedly took to his home. No matter who saw those documents, or even if they were put in the hands of the Russians or the Chinese, the United States would not fall into the ocean. I guarantee you that. It would not fall to the communists. It would not fall to the terrorists. All this national security state secrecy is ridiculous, but it's all part and parcel of this national security state. And it's also part of the administrative state, where you've got so many regulations. Remember, America was not a national security state, and it was not an administrative regulatory state throughout the first 100 years of American history. Then it got converted to an administrative state, and now, boy, you got all these lawyers and judges who have taken administrative law and law school and income tax law, and all it is a way to get people. If you've got regulations smothering society and an IRS code this thick smothering society, you can get anybody anytime you want. Okay, or national security. You want to get somebody that used to work for the government. Oh, national security. If you can't get them on that, you can get them on an income tax violation. Whatever they want to get, whenever they want to get you, they've got the income tax and the IRS code that's thick, and the regulatory state and the administrative state. They'll find something. And Bolton using classified information, but he's getting hoisted his own petard. The best thing we could ever do, and I've said this for umpteen years, is dismantle the national security state. You cannot have a free society and a national security state. And the two are contradictory to each other. Same thing with a welfare state and an administrative state. Separate economy and the state. Get government out of the economy totally. Don't deregulate. Just separate economy and the state. Get government entirely out of economic affairs. No regulations at all. No power to regulate economic activity. That's a true free enterprise system where enterprise is totally free of government control or regulation. Finally, let's wrap it up with Trump's tariff campaign. Still going strong, still waging the trade war against China and who knows who else. But he's now, he's got this bailout of American farmers going. He cost them massive sales to China because China retaliates, and they retaliated by not buying soybeans from American farmers. Farmers are going bankrupt. Same way they did in Trump's first term when he started a trade war against China there at that time too. And then he establishes a welfare plan out of the tariff revenues, which is acknowledging that when he said the foreign country pays a tariff, that it wasn't true because it's American taxpayers. And he's acknowledging that by saying, well, out of these tax revenues, I'm going to establish a welfare program for American farmers. And that's what he did the first time. But American farmers, who wants to be on welfare? Oh, yeah. Do they appreciate the money? Well, yeah, when you're going bankrupt because you're not selling anymore, yeah, you're going to take a dole. The dole is very, very attractive. But it puts you under government control, too, as we've seen with universities where Trump threatens, you do this or I'm going to remove your dole, like he's doing with Colombia. I'm going to cancel your dole if you don't get on board and do what I want in this war on drugs or war on terrorism. And it's just a crooked, corrupt system. And now, ironically, the Chinese are buying their soybeans from Argentina, and Argentina's having financial problems. So under Malay, monetary problems. So Trump's coming up with a package to bail out them. Where does he get all this money? There's $37 trillion in federal debt. This is what I find fascinating is where do they keep finding all this money when there's already a deficit? They're spending more than what they're bringing in, and to the tune of almost $2 trillion a year now. That's adding on from 33 trillion to 35 trillion to 37 trillion. That day of reckoning on that debt is going to come due at some point. Now, a lot of seniors are hoping that by the time that day of reckoning comes, they'll be dead and their children and grandchildren have to deal with it, and good riddance to them. But that's a wrong attitude. But somehow or another, Trump finds the money to do all this. There's a report that Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Secretary, is spending, I think it was $170 million for 2 luxury jets. I don't know why she needs 2, but luxury jets to transport her around. Now, where do they get this money? They just, they spend it like willy-nilly, like, oh, well, what the heck, 37 trillion, what's another 170 million here, 170 million there. Well, after a while, all those 170 millions add up, and they've added up to a $2 trillion deficit. But in any event, they have enough money to bail out Argentina. What in the heck is going on? But why bail out a foreign country when you're harming American farmers at the same time, but they're saying, well, we're going to bail them out too because we've damaged them, we've hurt them with this trade war. And China is now going to buy those soybeans from Argentina, but Argentina's having trouble, so we're going to bail them out too. The whole thing's crazy. And it's like what I've said, that the problem is not Donald Trump. The problem is the systems we have in place here. They're bad systems. The national security state system, the welfare state system, the administrative state system, the drug war system, the immigration control system. All these systems operate together. The public school system, that's where the indoctrination starts, where people buy into all these systems. They train people's minds to think in terms of statism and operate within the status box. And that's why they see us libertarians as threats to their status box, because we're not part of their box. We exist outside the box, mocking and ridiculing what's going on inside the box. But it's all because of this status system that consists of these separate systems that I'm talking about here. If you dismantle the systems, notice I didn't say reform. If you dismantle the systems and you leave a limited government republic with an unhampered free market economy, a free society, now you're talking about getting this country back on the right road, the road to peace, freedom, prosperity, and harmony with the people of the world. That's this week's Trump Watch. Thank you all for tuning in. This week, we have our next segment of our new series on the critical importance of civil liberties. That'll be on Thursday, and Libertarian Angle will be posting it on that day. Thank y'all, and I look forward to seeing you next week.